Okay, I want to show you what I think is the beginnings of helping you with your workflow within Xero as it is now. It's not ideal, but it might be on the way to getting you to where you want to be. Okay, so if we think about this, the first thing we do is we get an inquiry and we produce a quote for somebody. So you do a quote up to me, and in the quote we have one at 4,500, and that goes to our normal sales account. Everything's hunky dory, and we go freight. One, and it's going to be $2,000 expensive freight. We've probably got a freight that's expensive, so we'll put it to 200 as well. Okay. This is a demo account, so it's a bit interesting. So extra zero there. Okay. So you send that quote off to me. Great, thanks very much. I mark it as accepted. It comes back as marked as accepted. And so I have an accepted quote. Now, at this stage, we have a choice. Our accepted quote could be the catalyst for production. So whatever form this goes to, if it's just printing this piece of paper, this goes into production. But I want to collect a deposit against this invoice. But when I create, how would I do that? So in order to get this through to production, I'm going to say to my client, you have to pay me a deposit. So if I want to create a deposit, and this is a little bit of manual entry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the quote number because that's important. And I'm going to go up to my plus and I'm going to say that I want to receive money. I'm going to get that money into my business bank account because that's where they all go. I'm going to create it for the client, Pauline Hayden, and it must be the same contact as the quote. I'm going to make this to be a prepayment. I'm going to put the reference here to be the quote number reference, and I'm going to write deposit. And I'm going to change the branding to be a deposit invoice, which we've set up previously. And down the bottom here, I'm going to say 40% of quote below 2 required to begin production. I'm going to do 1. I know that my quote, which I've held open in another tab, I can't remember what it was actually, but it was 7,500 and I want half of it, so I'm going to divide that by 2, or I'm going to times by 0.4, which is your 40%, 4,100 times 0.4. Now, this is going to go to a balance sheet account. At the moment, I'm just using suspense for the example. And then I am going to say save. When I say save, here is my prepayment. Let's navigate back. Before I actually hit that, I could have printed it. Deposit invoice, you could, I could have attached a whole heap of things, and I could have emailed it off and attached all those things to go, whatever information you have. I could have done that just like I would have done with a deposit, with a normal invoice. However, this is going to sit waiting for me to receive the money on my bank reconciliation and also in my list of invoices. So I've sent out my deposit. Now, if for some reason it doesn't go through, I have the facility to make a cash refund on this deposit invoice. Okay, so now if I look at the customer, they have an accepted quote which has gone into production. They have paid us a deposit invoice. And at some stage along the journey, I want to turn this quote into an invoice for payment. So here I am back at the quote stage. Right, we've gone to production with that. It's all happening and it's going to be out the door in X amount of time. And you think, okay, I want to send this to the client so that they've got enough time to have that paid when it's ready to leave. So I follow your process where we turn our quote into an invoice, and here's our invoice. We make our due date. Production we think is another 2 weeks away. We've got our reference number. We've got the full value of the invoice. No problems there. We're going to say approve. We are asked, you have 2,840 in outstanding credit. That was the payment invoice that we created, and we've received and marked off the bank. That's another part of the process. But here we've said, okay, you've got the invoice. Do you want to allocate it? We're going to say, yep, allocate it. So we're going to allocate that to the sale. And there we have the invoice done and dusted. Right. Something happens. They say to us, we only want half a crush. This prepayment is not linked to the bank. So Laurie is fully empowered to take that allocation off. This in itself will be paid because we've allocated it to the bank. Let me just do that for you to reassure you. So at the bank, in our example, we got $2,000 here, and we're going to find and match that. So we're matching it to our prepayment deposit invoice. So to make it 2,000 for the example. That's what's from the bank. Okay, so this is apparently my payment. It's only for an example. So we've taken that off. If we refresh this page, we've got our money. So we're going to go to invoices. So we've got our prepayment that's happened there. We've now turned our quote into an invoice. Down here, we know that we have $2,000 in outstanding credit. Do we want to credit this? I can either credit that. At the moment, there's no payments attached here, so I can change it. I'm still not seeing the bank, so if I need to credit this invoice with this amount, but then I decide that I don't want to, I can go into the prepayment and I can remove it. It's been received at the bank, but it's not been applied to an invoice yet. So I'm still at liberty to make changes to that invoice as much as I want. Here's my invoice. Make whatever changes you want. I've reduced it. I've updated it. I apply my credit back to it. I want to see, so that's fine. I now want to credit off half of the freight, so I add a credit note. Put in the amount that I want to credit, approve. Okay, so now I've got an invoice. I want to change the, yeah, and so that's ready to go. Your credit, your prepayment has been applied. So when I look in invoices, I've got a deposit prepayment that I received that's been paid. I applied that to the invoice, and I can see that because I've got a little yellow tag here. And so there is only 1,575 waiting. And I created a credit to put a credit against the original invoice that is now completely allocated and paid. Now, you wouldn't normally see all of this audit trail because it would be just what is owing in the awaiting payments. Or I guess you could go into me as a person, and there you would see we got a prepayment on a date. Our quote was created first, then a prepayment, then we had an invoice that was partially paid, and we did a credit note. The whole audit trail and story is there rather than locked away at the bottom of some. It's the beginning.